On this episode, we're headed to Carbondale to visit with one of the most accomplished coaches in college basketball. Nearly 600 victories, more than 3 decades leading successful programs, a career built on developing players, building culture, and proving that sustained success can happen anywhere. Coach Scott Nagy transformed South Dakota State from a Division II power into one of the nation's premier Division I mid-major programs, guided Wright State to conference championships and NCAA Tournament success, and now enters his 3rd season leading one of the Missouri Valley Conference's most tradition-rich programs at Southern Illinois. We are excited to talk about growing up around Fighting Illini basketball, playing at Delta State, and then coaching with legendary Coach Lou Henson, guiding one of the most difficult transitions in college basketball history, building winning cultures everywhere, and what excites him most about the future of Saluki basketball. Coach Nagy, welcome to Deep in the Valley.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you. And Coach, we always like to start at the beginning. And basketball was a part of your life from almost day one. Your father, Dick, spent years on Lou Henson's staff at Illinois. And kind of what are some of your earliest memories growing up around college basketball?
For me, it was even as a baby. When I started in Texas, my dad was at Abilene, Hardin Simmons in Abilene, Texas. And that's where he played. He played for Coach Henson there. Coach Henson recruited him there. And then he was a GA there. And then he got his first job was at Barton County Community College in Great Bend, Kansas. I was 3 at the time. And he was the first coach. Barton County just opened up. So he was the first coach Barton County ever had. And I just remember as a young boy sitting on a bench. I have pictures of me in my bow tie next to my dad. Of course, I heard language that I never heard at home. I heard at practice. Dad, the kind of coach Dad was, the things he did and how he coaches players, you couldn't do it today. You'd be fired pretty quickly. But he was really hard on the guys and a tough coach. And so he was there 8 years, then East Central Junior College in Union, Missouri. And then he connected back with Coach Henson at the University of Illinois. And when we moved to Champaign, I was in the 8th grade.
I just actually moved to Springfield, Missouri from Lynn, Missouri, which is right on Highway 50, not that far from East Central. So I know right where you're at in Union, Missouri. So during your high school career, you started drawing interest from multiple colleges and universities. Can you talk about when you started getting recruited, ultimately what made Delta State the right fit for you?
I was a good high school player. I wasn't a great one, but I did play with a great player, Roger McClendon, who was a McDonald's All-American. And we had a really good team our senior year. When it was 2 classes, went to the Final 8, and that was such a big accomplishment at that time. And I was mostly being recruited by Division III schools and visited Quincy. And Delta State had a coach down there named Ed Murphy. And Ed was from Syracuse, New York, and my dad was from Syracuse. And Ed was actually the one that convinced Coach Henson to recruit my dad to Hardin Simmons. And they were college teammates. And I went down to visit, really enjoyed it. And that's where I went, spent my 4 years there, had just a great time down there, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you still hold several assist records at Delta State and been inducted into the Hall of Fame down there. And as a point guard, how much did learning to make everyone else better influence the coach maybe that you've become today?
Yeah, I think and I wasn't a great player. I was never all conference or anything like that. But I did, even in college, play with some tremendous players and even one NBA player, Gerald Glass. And so I was always fortunate enough to be around other good players, and I could pass the ball, and that was my deal, was taking care of the scores. And I think that I always have a really good connection with my point guards just because I know how important being on the floor is and being an extension of the coach. And I just think I went into coaching because my dad didn't even want me to go into coaching. He wanted me out of coaching. I think he saw the pitfalls and the things that were difficult about it. And I have 3 boys, and if they want to coach, then they want to coach. And one of them is a college coach. But Dad just absolutely was adamant about not being in it. And even when I tried to not be in it, it's what I knew. It's just what I grew up around and what I knew. And I was fortunate enough to be under some good coaches. But I think playing that point guard position, I was a bit obstinate. I think because I grew up around it, I wasn't the easiest guy to coach because I felt like I already knew everything. And God has blessed me with some players just like that I have to coach.
That's exactly right. So after graduation, you immediately stepped into coaching at Illinois. You were alongside your dad, but also working for Lou Henson. So you had a chance to be around one of the most iconic teams in Illinois history in the Flying Illini. And like I said, growing up in Big Ten country, we all remember Kendall Gill, Nick Anderson, Marcus Liberty, Kenny Battle, Stephen Bardo, and Lowell Hamilton. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like and maybe lessons learned that you've carried forward with you in your career?
Well, first of all, the best experience was just being around Coach Henson every day and getting to be in the coaches' meetings and just listen and soak up. And, what I began to understand is just how important defense and rebounding was to him. He recruited good offensive players, but boy, what we spent our time on was defense and rebounding. And what a gentleman on top of it. I never heard Coach Henson ever utter a curse word. He had to work hard to get a technical. He would have to walk on the floor because he wasn't going to get one from any words he said. And so he had to do it other ways, but really a consistent just voice in terms of what he wanted, and I appreciate the fact that he relied heavily on his assistants, but to get to be around that team every day, my first year in coaching, of course, I was pretty much the same age as those guys. I played against Kenny Battle in high school, and I wasn't really a coach to those guys. I was more just, I would stand around. I just marvel every day at just how incredibly athletic that team was. It was a lot of fun to go to practice and I remember we went and played LSU that year, and they had Chris Jackson at the time, and Chris Jackson fouled out, I think, with about 9 minutes to go in the game, and he had 27 points. And LSU put 100 points on us, and we beat them by 27. It was incredible. Like 127 to 100, I think, was the score. And Dale Brown said after the game, he said, "That's the greatest collection of athletes I've ever seen." And Michigan won the national championship that year, and we crushed Michigan twice in conference play, including on senior day. And it was a tremendous basketball team. Very athletic. We weren't big. Our center was 6'7". You say Lowell Hamilton, but our point guard Stephen Bardo was 6'6", and so we just big and long and athletic across the board, and a lot of fun to coach.
It was so much fun to watch. And you think about the Big Ten during that year specifically, because Illinois and Michigan both made it to the Final Four. And Brian and I, growing up in Iowa, we will probably never forget that Iowa had a 20-point or a 16-point lead in the Elite Eight and blew it in the second half. And so there could have been 3 Big Ten teams in the Final Four that year.
Yeah, it was. And I think AJ Armstrong was on that team. Yeah, just incredible teams. Indiana that year won the Big Ten. They only had 2 losses, and they were both to us. We had 3 losses. We lost Kendall Gill for a little bit with a broken foot, and then he came back. But yeah, for me to get to experience it at that level, first year of coaching, you think, oh, this is going to be easy, this whole deal.
So now it's 1995 and you become the head coach at South Dakota State. You're still in your 20s. And what's going through your mind when someone hands you the keys to the program?
I was scared to death. I really was. I'd been at South Dakota State for 3 years, so I knew the people, and that's how I was able to get hired at such a young age, 28 years old, but scared. I remember telling my wife, what if I screw this up? Like, where do I go from here? I'm already a head coach, and if I screw it up, it's just kind of downhill from here. I didn't know what I was doing as a head coach, really nervous, and yet it was probably the most fun I ever had as a coach was those first few years, because I remember our first 3 years after we won the league, all 3 years, I think we were 75-10 after 3 years. And I remember my dad saying to me, "You got to get out of there. It's like, you're not going to make any more friends than you have right now. This is the time to go." And of course, I ended up there 21 years.
I grew up in Northwest Iowa, so I was fortunate enough with news coverage and telecasts and things like that. With Brookings being close, it was easy to follow what was going on up there. And you mentioned you make 8 NCAA Division II tournaments in the first 9 seasons. So what was that secret sauce? You said you didn't know what you were doing, but you were doing something right.
I think when I went back there, I got to coach guys that were juniors and seniors that I recruited, because I was there. I left for a couple of years because my coach got fired, and then I went back. And so to get the start there, to get to coach guys I recruited was just a great experience. And then, like, you could say, and I think then I didn't completely understand it, but we just had better players. We did. And South Dakota State, in terms of Division II, was a great place to recruit to. We drew fans very well. It was, even in the Division II days, South Dakota State was like the University of Iowa or the University of Illinois is to those states. That's what we were to South Dakota. And up there in the winter, there isn't much else to do. We go to men's basketball and women's basketball. And so we drew really well. We probably averaged 5,000 people a game for Division II. So we were able to recruit good players. And I'm not saying coach is not important, but it's mostly about the players.
So one of the things that fascinates us the most about what you've experienced, every phase imaginable, Division II success, then the transition to Division I, eventually NCAA tournaments. For fans that haven't lived through a transition like that, how difficult is it to keep people believing when the win totals maybe dip a little bit after the transition to Division?
A lot. I think we went from, of course, I've coached many years, but I think we went from 27 wins to 6 wins. And when we went into it, we couldn't keep players. It was the first time I'd really experienced recruiting kids and developing them and then them leaving. And it was a brutal time. I think we went 6 wins, 8 wins, 13 wins, 14 wins, and holy cow, I'm used to 25 wins a year and hardly losing. And it really made me question whether or not I wanted to coach. And I think through that, it was such a hard time. But as I look back on it, probably the most important time of my coaching career. And I had to learn how to coach. I did, because I had to try to figure out how to beat teams that had better players than us at that point. And I didn't have to do that before. We had better players and we just ran you to death. And so it made me a way better coach. And it deepened my faith in God. And there were just so many good things that came out of it, even though it was very difficult. And as I look back on it, as hard as it was to go through, I'm thankful I had to go through it.
Maybe, and this is something completely out of your control, but do you think entering Division I as an independent made things more challenging instead of being a conference?
Yes, we were all over trying to put a schedule together in January and February when you're not in a league. We were all over the country, from California to New Jersey to Southern Tech. We were everywhere, and it was brutal. It was just a very tough period for sure. And then to get in the league really helped. It really helped to get in the Summit.
Yep. So you join the Summit and then everything starts to click. You get conference championships, NCAA tournament appearances, NIT wins, national recognition. So when you look back today, what made those South Dakota State teams so special?
Again, the players. We probably one player that really, well, it's not probably, it's true. Nate Walters changed everything for us, really. And we recruited really good players around him on top of it. But when you add an NBA player to the squad, it changes everything. And so it wasn't my coaching. We were just fortunate enough to get Nate and keep him. And I would say still to this day, the best player I've ever coached. And I've coached some good ones, but Nate was tremendous. And we recruited good shooters around him. And that's what we did.
And so then after 21 years in the same place, you make a move to Wright State. When Wright State calls, what makes that the right fit for you and your family and the reason to leave Brookings and go to Dayton, Ohio?
Chris, it was the hardest. Without, somebody said, what was the toughest decision in your life? That was it. Without question. I thought I would probably retire at South Dakota State and stay there forever. Loved Brookings, had and still do have such great friends there. We had family challenges. My wife's parents live in Nashville. We didn't get to see them often. My dad lived in Chicago at the time. And I didn't really want to go, but I knew for whatever reason, this was a door God was opening, and it was time to step through it. And I remember the morning of the day that I was going to be at Wright State and be announced was probably the lowest moment of my life. I couldn't believe how low I was. And my wife basically almost had to pick me up off the floor and get me going. And so it was tough. It was hard because you have to move your family. All they knew was South Dakota. And as I look back on it, I think such a good move for my family, because if all they knew was South Dakota, this was an opportunity to get to know another place. And look back on it, it was a tremendous move for my family. It really was. And at the time, we just had the 7 of us, and now there's And that wasn't that long ago. There's 15 of us now. And so it was such a great, in terms of the family, it was a hard move to learn a new place and recruit an area I hadn't recruited. And Wright State wasn't really viewed very highly in Ohio. But I'll tell you, Bob Grant, the AD there, was a phenomenal guy and didn't know me. It's not normal to normally you end up being hired because somebody knows you. Bob did not know me, and he came after me hard and made it really difficult for me to say no. And he was such a tremendous AD for me to work for. And Justin Sell at South Dakota State was a great AD too. And I was fortunate enough to get to work with Bob and take some of my assistants with me, and we were able to get that turned around pretty quickly.
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to us is consistency your programs have always showed. You arrive at Wright State and build another winning program, different school, different conference, different players, but you get the same results. So what elements of that building process remained consistent from South Dakota State, and what things evolved after you arrived at Wright State?
Recruiting players. I remember when we went Division I and we got in the summit, and I was telling my dad, man, there's some good coaches in here. Scott Sutton was in there, and Campy, and just Ron Hunter. I'm like, Dad, we got to get better. There are good coaches here. And he said, I remember my dad saying, hey, let me tell you something right now. Quit trying to out-coach them and just out-recruit them. And he's right. He's right. It's the most important pieces to have. And it's not just talent. It's figuring out the personalities and the fits and all those things. But talent is pretty dang important. And I figured that out over the years. And so that's what we did. And I was fortunate enough to take 3 of my coaches that were with me at South Dakota State. And so that really helped. That was such a big help because those guys, Clint played for me, and Brian had been with me a long time, and Nick Goff was our Dobo for a long time. And so just the continuity that gave us, even when we went, we all kind of went together. And I remember early, it was misery loves company. We were all out of our element, but we were together. And that really helped. That really helped a lot. And so we were able to recruit good players.
Yeah, so you mentioned it, South Dakota State being the flagship program of South Dakota, and at that time you were there, but now you're at Wright State and you're kind of playing second fiddle in your own town with Dayton being there. Maybe talk about what it's like to be in a town that has another major basketball program that you're somewhat trying to compete with, but not really.
Yeah, you go from being the big fish in the small sea to being the small fish in the big sea, for sure. Mm-hmm. Like you say, UD is there, Ohio State's an hour away, Cincinnati's 40 minutes away, Xavier's 40 minutes away, University of Miami, and really the whole MAC league is just viewed just probably a little bit higher than a horizon. You're looking at 13 Division I schools in one state. And Wright State, there was a saying, Wright State, wrong school. And so we had to battle all those things. When I got there, it was really difficult to recruit Ohio kids. But we could go to Illinois or whatever and bring them on campus. We had a great practice facility. Bob was dead set on the fact that men's basketball is going to be the lead deal on this. And so men's basketball was well taken care of. And so we were able to recruit kids from other places that hadn't necessarily known about the reputation of Wright State. And then when I left, almost all our kids were Ohio kids. We were able to turn that around and have people view our program in just see it completely differently. And so I was very proud of that. And I was glad when I left that Clint was able to get the job, and he's still doing a great job.
Yeah, then Southern Illinois calls in one of the flagship programs in the Missouri Valley Conference. And what immediately excited you about Carbondale? What made it the right fit for the next stop in your career?
I would say, number one, I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't even like this. Both the jobs that I've taken, really all of them, they all just happened by chance. And it was never a time where I was looking for a job and reaching out and trying to get one. And actually, Tim Leonard, the AD here, had called me like 3 or 4 days before. He wanted to talk to me about the job, and he wanted to talk to me about some other people that I knew. He was looking at a couple coaches, and I had a connection with both the coaches. One of them worked for him, the other one was in our league. And so he wanted to talk to me about them. And I remember my wife saying, why didn't he want to talk to you? And I said, I'm guessing he knows what I make. And because ADs, they know all that stuff, and maybe they're not paying that. I don't know. And then a couple of days later, I get a call from my agent saying, hey, I think they want to talk to you about it. And so, and then the next day I was on a plane. That's how fast it went. But probably one of the biggest decisions for me was that Bob Grant, my AD there, retired, and things were changing a little bit. And again, it was one of those deals where I didn't want to go. I had it figured out. When I left South Dakota State, I had it figured out. I knew how to win there, and then I didn't know how to win at Wright State. Then I figured out Wright State. I knew how to win there. Do I want to do this again? And I think naively thought I could skip over there in one day, look at it, and get back, and nobody would know. And that by the time I landed, people knew what was going on. And it's amazing how the fans here in particular, they were following the plane on some tracker and knew it was in Dayton. And so it didn't take long for people to figure out what was going on. And I think from there, it really made it hard to even go back. But it was the time for us to go. And I think probably the hardest decision for us there, in terms of the job, it wasn't that was a pretty easy decision for us. This is the Missouri Valley. Jamie and I are both from Illinois, so it felt like going home. The hardest thing for us at that point was leaving our family, because we kind of had things the way we wanted. We had all our kids around us. We had our grandkids around us. And so we had it made in that regard. And now we move over here and we're moving away from our family. That was the hardest decision for us.
Yeah, we'd be doing a disservice to Saluki fans in this podcast if we didn't talk a little bit about the history of the program.
Tremendous. Let's face it, 3 Sweet 16 appearances from a school this size doesn't happen very often. And just great coaches, great tradition, without question. When you go down and you talk about Bruce and Matt and Coach Heron, like you mentioned, and Chris did such a great job after those guys. And there's just such high expectations here. But let's face it, it's been 19 years now since they've won the league and been back in the NCAA tournament. And I think that's what people want to be able to change and see changed. When I hear people talk all the time about those teams, and yet I have to remind them, if you had those teams today, you wouldn't keep those players very long.
Yeah.
They'd be here and be gone. So the things have changed a lot in college basketball, let's face it, but it's still our job to figure out how we can get this team back to the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. And you talked a little bit about this already, but you had it figured out at SDSU. You had it figured out at Wright State. Now you're at Southern Illinois. Every coaching change starts with maybe culture before the winning starts. And so what are the things that you have figured out about turning Southern Illinois around and pushing it towards the NCAA tournament? And what are some of the things that you still need to see?
Like I say, it's changed so much even since I was at Wright State in the 2 years I've been here, and how quickly things have moved. And I used to think that, hey, we'll be able to get kids and keep them. And if one of our players is going to get offered $1 million to go somewhere, then I'm going to say, hey, congratulations. And it used to bother me. It used to, no, be loyal. And I think would I be? And so the kids are a lot different today. They're much more entitled, but I don't blame them for that. I guess really I would most of the time I would say the people around them have made them think that way. And sometimes I get frustrated and think, there are a lot of other things I could be doing now. I'm glad I'm on the back end of this deal. But then I think when God reminds me, hey, these kids need you and people like you around them more. And so it's harder to build a program and sustain it, obviously, because you can't keep your kids and then your older kids teach your younger kids. A lot of times your older kids are kids that are brand new now. But everybody's facing the same thing. I don't get to complain, and we're all facing the same thing. And so the one thing we've been able to do, I think, in the 2 years and now start my third, is in terms of the culture and the kind of kids we want, we have that now. And we had it last year, but it was the worst shooting team I've ever coached, without question. When I say we'll shoot the ball better this year, no kidding. There's no option. We shot it so poorly that, yeah, we're going to shoot it better this year. But we got, I think last year, in terms of the kind of people we wanted, we got it there. We weren't as skilled as I'm used to being and shooting the ball like I'm used to being. And this year, we feel like we have that, where we have great kids and we're much more skilled.
So one of the topics Brian and I really enjoy talking to other coaches about is roster construction. And so can you talk a little bit about making the roster yours and perhaps your philosophy on finding a balance between player retention, high school recruiting, and finding players with the right fit from the portal?
Man, that's a pretty long and deep question to think through, but I like to recruit high school kids. I just do, because I want to help develop them. I saw last year in the Valley, there were some freshmen that had major impacts. When you look at even Belmont that won the league, they had 2 freshmen that had major impacts for them. And so I think you can do that. A lot of people think you can't recruit freshmen now, and they have to play right away, or they're going to leave anyway. But mainly, I'm looking for guys really at all those positions. And the 5 might be an exception, but for the most part, I'm looking for guys that can handle it, pass it, and shoot it. They can do all 3. If you can find a 5-man like I had at Wright State and Loud and Love that is just a dominant inside player, a physical presence, I think you can get away with that as long as you surround him with 4 other guys that can play like guards. And that's really what I'm looking for. If I can find 5 men that can shoot it and point guards that can post, and there's just so many things we can do offensively. I think as a coach, I've never been concerned about figuring out ways to score against people. Recruit good offensive players, they'll score. They know how to score. Just give them a little bit of structure and a little bit of this is a good shot, this is not a good shot, and explain to them why we do the things we do. Not this is what we're trying to do, but this is why. The efficiency of the game, getting to the free throw line, all those things, and then giving them the freedom to play and be a player. I have players ask me all the time, do you want me to do this or do you want me to do that? And I say, I want you to be a player. When you go to the play, of course, kids don't go to the playground anymore. They used to, but whatever. You go to the gym and just play. You don't ask, do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? You go be a player and quit asking permission. I don't need you looking over the bench every time and worrying about what I think. I want you to be who you are. And so I think players like playing for me on the offensive end. And then I think you got to take those kids and demand the defense and the rebound, and always like Coach Henson did.
Some of the SIU teams that I remember in college sprinkled in international talent. I'm thinking of Marcelo da Silva, Mirko Pavlovic, coming from the Salukis of the past. But how important is adding in international flavor to the current roster? I noticed that you've got a couple on the roster this year.
We do. I don't know if it is important. I think it's just really part of college basketball now. It's a chance to get somebody with a little more experience, a little bit older. And that's always important. If you can find somebody that's older that has pro experience, has been playing against men and not just against high school kids, it can be an advantage. And there's some challenges that come with it too, because they're a long way away from home and just little things like that, the culture, all those things, there are challenges, but I think it just adds flavor to your team.
Yeah, you've had the 26-27 edition of the Salukis in town now for a little bit of the summer. And can you talk about what the summer has looked like, how workouts are going, and what makes you excited about this group heading into the season?
Very quietly, very optimistic about who we are, number one, and the kind of players the first thing I really like about our team is we just have no egos right now, which part of that is who we recruited. And some of it is we have 2 players here that the first time I met them face to face was when they came to campus. It's just recruiting so much different now than it used to be. And so you don't exactly know what you're getting. Now, when you put the roster together, you do your research and you do the best you can. But when you get players here, you see how the pieces fit. And really, the fact that we don't have any egos, kids are super coachable, which is normal this time of year because they all want to please the coach and want to play. And as we start whittling it down, then it becomes a little more difficult. And again, everybody has those challenges. But I think we do have a group. It just is so difficult. Now I think about this and I talk to players about it. I went on the road this weekend to recruit, and in one of the gyms, and I won't mention which one, but every sign in the gym, the word me was in it. You can't guard me. Someday you're going to tell your grandkids you played against me. And I'm thinking, man, these kids, it's no wonder they think the way they do, because the adults around them, this is what they're telling them. And it just really bothered me. And I went back to my team. And I was just like, I'm trying to get them to understand life is not about you. It just isn't. And if you make it about you, you are going to be one miserable person. And you're going to make everybody around you miserable. And it's human nature. Let's face it. It's human nature for us to think about ourselves. It just is. Like you take a group picture, and if you look at it, you're going to look for yourself first. It's just human nature. We know this. And so I think as a coach, we battle that every day. One, I battle it in myself. And then 2, every day, probably the biggest thing I do is battle human nature in our players. And to be able to make it about the team first, to be able to walk in the gym and say, how can I make my teammates better? Not me, who can give to me, but how can I give? How can I give to my teammates? I think those are way better lessons in life when everybody's chasing what they can get right now. What can I get? What can I get? And those are all the things we're battling every day. And I want to fight that in our players. And we feel like we have a pretty good group that is bought into that. And I hope that it continues. I think it's easy right now. I think, like I said, I think it'll be more difficult as we start to narrow it down.
But, Coach, when fans watch Southern Illinois this season, whether it be in Carbondale at the Banterra Center or on TV or at ESPN Plus, what do you hope that they're saying about the Salukis after the game?
There was Southern Illinois used to be known, they would call it floor burn you. And we know the people here love that. We know they take pride in that. And they hired a coach that wants to be that way as well. And that's what I want more than anything, is that you can see their players play hard and they play hard for each other. And other than that, I really don't care what they say. Or when I call a timeout or whatever else, I want them to be able to say, you can tell that the culture around there is about the team and not about the individuals.
The team that you just described, are those quite a bit of the qualities that are inside of you, Coach?
I told you, like, the human nature part of me is no, it's not. But I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about our players and my staff. And I would say that the natural part of me, the flesh in me, is no, I'm just like the rest of these guys, and I'm very selfish. But I'm thankful that God has given me a new heart. And there are times when I think well, and when I'm genuinely concerned about our players, I think I can be a very good coach. And there are times where I get uptight or worried about myself, and then I'm not a very good coach when I'm worried about me. And I have good people around me that can help me recognize that and remind me. And I don't always like to listen. I don't like it when people tell me what to do. That's that old nature. But I'm thankful that God has put good people around me and can give me good advice. And like I say, I battle that in my players, but I also battle it in me and recognize it. I say all the time, I'm the biggest mess in the room, but at least I know it.
Yeah.
So, Coach, you've coached in several outstanding conferences. How would you describe the Missouri Valley Conference basketball to someone who's never experienced it?
I think, one, I haven't been in a league where it's very balanced. Let's face it. It just is. It's most of the leagues you're in, there's 2, 3, 4 really good teams, and they dominate the league. And it's really hard to do in this league. And I think it's because of how many good coaches are in this league. It's nuts. Just the level of coaching and really good coaching. And so many of the high major schools love to dip into the Missouri Valley because they know if kids have success here, they're going to have success there. Yeah. And they've been coached well. And so I think it's a bit higher level. But when I was at South Dakota State and I was at Wright State, we played Missouri Valley schools and we whipped them. And we got whipped sometimes. So I wasn't concerned about whether or not I could get it done here and recruit the level. That was no concern. But it's a physical, it's a grind, 20 league games against every team that's well coached. And it's a lot of fun to coach in the league.
And you kind of described it a little bit, but the 20 league season, how would you kind of describe the Missouri Valley Conference regular season kind of night after night with these great coaches? What's it like to try to prepare for a Wednesday, Saturday in the Valley?
Yeah, and it's where you rely on your assistant so much because I can't think ahead. There's no way I can think ahead to who we're playing after the team we're getting ready to play. And so you really rely on your assistants. I think everybody does it differently in the terms of the amount of information they give. I don't like to give too much. I'd rather our players knew nothing and just played. And so we try not to overdo it. But because our conference championship is pushed up so tight, it really impacts, the whole conference season. And we played, I think last year we played 11 games in 33 days. It was incredible. And everybody's doing it. So again, I'm not complaining about it, but it's a lot in terms of the travel. Your kids are supposed to be going to class, just all these things, 11 games in 33 days. And the amount of information, the physical toll, the mental toll on everybody. And again, everybody's going through it, so nobody's gaining an advantage there, but it can be pretty brutal.
Yeah, and moving into this season and building a non-conference schedule is incredibly challenging. Talk about where this schedule's at and any non-conference games you can share right now, and maybe how that kind of ties into the Paradise Jam and some opportunities there, and when you might be able to get that matchup.
Yeah, the non-conference schedule, we're almost done with it. We're not completely done, but we're returning games to Arkansas, Little Rock, and UMKC that came here last year. And Richmond's return a game that we played at their place last year. Washington State's coming in here. And it's hard at our level. I tell my athletic director that no team, any team that's serious about going to the NCAA tournament is not getting bought. The teams, and I'm not talking about your conference championship teams, but when you look at teams that are getting at-large bids, it's almost guaranteed none of them got bought. They're playing a lot of home games. They're beating up on those teams. And so and every year the metric kind of changes. It was the RPI, and then it was the net, and now it's the WAB, wins above. I don't know. Every year it kind of changes, and you have to figure that out and try to put that schedule together. And at our level, to play anybody above you on trying to get a home and home is nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go play them on the road, then you're going to get bought. And like I say, it's hard. Those are hard games to win. And they're buying you for a reason, because they think it's a win. And so scheduling at South Dakota State, Wright State here, most difficult thing that we do, for sure. It's the most difficult thing we do. And we may not be done with schedule till September.
Wow. Yeah, so that kind of leads into, you talked a little bit about the beginning portion of the schedule. Now we're going to talk about the back end here with Arch Madness and some changes that have been announced here with the Valley and moving into this season, and kind of what do those changes mean for Southern Illinois in your perspective on it?
I think the major change as a coach that you look at is, we're only taking 10 teams and we have 11 teams. And for coaches, that's a coach killer. Let's face it, with one team not going. So I think every coach is concerned about that. I probably, at my point in my career, I'm less concerned about it as a younger guy. I think I'm the oldest coach in the league at this point. And it's crazy because just how quickly I went from the youngest coach to the oldest coach it blows me away. But I think with the women coming in, and we had that when I was at South Dakota State, the Summit League tournament was there in Sioux Falls, and had the men and the women's team. It just makes it easier for fans. And it probably, in terms of a fan perspective, is going to bring more people to the game on both sides. And so I think that's probably good. It certainly helps the league financially. And so what I mostly care about is it doesn't impact the men's tournament. It has a little bit in terms of us losing to one team, but I think that it still should be a great tournament.
So I would say when SIU is playing well, their fans dominate St. Louis. And so when you picture Southern Illinois fans walking into the Enterprise Center this year for Arch Madness, maybe let's say after a really great regular season, what excites you the most about playing in Arch Madness with a lot of maroon in the stands?
Yeah, and we're the closest school to St. Louis, and so that should be the case, that we should draw the fans. It's a tradition for so many of the fans down here. They already have those dates blocked off. They know they're going there, and so they're very excited about it. And certainly, you know how it works. If you can win one game, then more of your fans are going to come. And for us, like if that happened for Belmont, it's hard for their fans to get there. But at Southern Illinois, if we win the first game and people get excited, it's not very far to drive to go to the next game. And so we know that can definitely build, and we have the best chance to do that.
Yeah, so one of the things that both Chris and I have admired about your career is that you built winners at 3 different institutions. Can you reflect on those successes and then talk to us about what things need to click this year for SIU to take that next step to that next level of success?
Yeah, we've built winners at 2 institutions, and certainly the plan is to do it here. And I've been frustrated the past 2 years, but like I say, we love this team. I think for this team, the biggest question for me is our level of physicality. I think we have the skill level, we have tremendous depth, we have the size in terms of the height. I don't know if we have the girth and the physicality that we had last year. We were a tremendous defensive team last year. We just didn't shoot it well. And when we shot it, we won. And when we didn't, the games were close, but we just couldn't overcome the poor shooting. And it was to get anything done offensively last year. We won a game at Illinois State. I think the score was 56-53. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know in my career if we've ever won a game when the score's been in the 50s, because I like the 80s. I want 80s and 90s. And to win a game in the 50s, I was blown away by that. I wasn't used to that. If we can maintain that level of physicality, the rebounding, and be as good defensively as we were last year, then we're going to have a much better chance, because we can score this year. There's no question in my mind. It doesn't even concern me.
That scares me a little bit. If you can defend the way that you did last year and you can score now, that scares me a little bit.
That's the big if. I told her, yeah, it's going to be our level of physicality, because we do have the size. We're just as athletic, if not more athletic. We shoot it way better. We pass it way better. We dribble it way better. It's, can we be as physical? And when you recruit kids that score, it becomes more finesse, and I'm not interested in finesse.
Mm-hmm. So, Coach, we love to end our episodes with a little rapid fire, just some questions that we want your honest, quick reaction to.
So, a favorite Valley arena to coach in besides the Banterra Center?
I want to say none of them.
I think that
we can take that. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
We'll take none.
So, the second one is in regard to scouting and game prep. What is the toughest Valley player in the last couple of years you've had to prep for?
Toughest Valley player. Oh, Lundblade. Lundblade was the guy.
Yep. And then if Chris and I come down to Carbondale for a game this winter, where are you going to send us for a pregame meal? And what is your go-to order at that establishment?
I would say, my wife and I like to go to the Global Gourmet here in town. And I can't tell you necessarily what to get, because their menu changes every week. But tremendous cooks down there.
Nice. So, Coach, what is a basketball coach that you would just really love to spend an afternoon talking hoops with?
Probably Kelvin Sampson. I respect what he's done, and I don't know him. My assistant coach, Steve Hawkins, knows him, but just have such tremendous respect for what he's done.
So, Coach, just about everybody has a caffeine delivery system. What's your preferred caffeine delivery system?
I drink 1 cup of coffee a day, and that's it. I try to limit the caffeine, and I try to limit the carbs.
Fantastic. If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
Boy, I've had that question a lot. I would be spending a lot more time with my grandkids.
There you go. And do you have one word that describes Southern Illinois basketball?
Tradition.
Yeah.
Great tradition.
So, Coach, we really appreciate you spending some time with us. We've actually had a lot of fun getting to know you, and we look forward to following the Salukis. We wish you guys nothing but the best of luck this season. Anything that you want to wrap up and talk to the fans about before we let you go?
No, I'm proud to be here and represent these people. And these things are good for me to do, because I tend to be a pretty private guy, and I'm not a big talker. And so I think people get a vision of who I am. And when I get to do something like this, it gives them a different view of me.
Absolutely. We kept you talking for almost an hour, Coach.
Yeah. That's hard to do, believe me.
All right. That's another episode of Deep in the Valley. We appreciate the fans spending a part of your week with us and talking Missouri Valley Conference basketball. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, follow along, listen to wherever you listen to your podcast, as we cover everything happening across the Valley all year long, from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, and Carbondale to Chicago. We'll be here every week to tell the stories that make the Valley special. For Brian Duttler, I'm Chris Bowser. We'll see you next time, Deep in the Valley.